Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Coach Karina Calhoun. I am your expert life strategist. I am super excited today. I have on the show Bernice or B. George, and I'm super excited, super thrilled to have this conversation. This has been a long anticipated conversation because we've kind of been chatting just briefly. I don't like to do the pre show interviews because I love the authenticity, but we've had just a few chats here and there, and it's been phenomenal thus far. So I know that this is going to be a really blessed conversation for all that are going to be listening. So, Bernice, B, how are you today?
Thank you so much for that very warm introduction. I'm doing pretty good, thank you. And I too am really excited to be able to share some ideas with your audience. So thank you so much for having me.
You are very welcome. You are very, very welcome. So, Bernice, tell us where in the world you are.
I am in the United Kingdom, England to be more specific, and even more specific, I'm in the Northwest, that is in Manchester. And that is a multicultural, multi-ethnic city where there's so much vibrancy, so much life, so much culture, so much of nature to enjoy. But one of the favorite places that I like to visit is just about 60, 90 minutes outside of Manchester, and it's called the Peak District. And if you want tranquility, if you want to
Mm,
restore and refresh body, mind, and spirit, that is the place to go because it's full of, you know, great trails, scenic, absolutely gorgeous scenes, picturesque villages, wildlife. You can go on a boat ride along the Windermere Lake and just relax and take in nature. It's just so restorative. I don't go as I'd love to visit more often, but it's one of those places that I have all those memories to revisit during those times when I'm feeling a little bit, oh, I could do with a bit of a restoration. I just take my mind back to that place. So I'm in Manchester and I have those wonderful opportunities to just spend time in nature and to connect with the source of my strength and power.
I love that you gave such a detailed description. For those of us who are able to envision these things, I tell people when I read um, or I'm listening to something, it's very difficult for me to distinguish later, did I read it or did I really experience it? Because when I read things, I really submerge myself into that writing, especially if it's really good. And so it's sometimes, and I don't mean it's difficult for, I can, I do understand when I've read and when I've actually lived it, but just the imagination part of it, I submerge myself in it, immerse myself in it, and I feel amazing when I do that. So I love listening to stories, and I love when people paint very vivid pictures because I could almost smell the grass, I could see the trees, I could see the sunlight, I could feel the breeze on my skin. I could just imagine me being right there where you're talking about, and just hearing the birds chirping, and just I loved it. I loved it. So thank you so very much for that description. It's key that when we are talking to people that we're able to really bring out the dynamics of in real life so that people are able to experience those things, because sometimes people don't have the opportunity to visit certain places. I remember when I lived in North Carolina years ago, there was an individual that I was very close with who actually told me that she had never been to the beach, which was
Mm.
astonishing for me because I grew up going to the beach all the time. And so for
Mhm.
her to tell me that, like, no, you've got to go immediately. You've got to
Yeah.
experience that. So I just wanted to just kind of pause there and just commend you on that very detailed description and how you took us from right from this video. I am on one side of the world and you're on another, but you actually brought us into this very beautiful place. So thank you for that. Thank you so very
Thank
much. So B, tell us, how have you been loving on the world around you recently?
Yes, I love that question actually, because I tell you, Karina, one of my greatest joys is to help and to see women develop what I describe as a coherent identity, an identity that allows
Mm,
them to choose the life they want to live, to align their lives with their passion and purpose. Without that authentic identity, women struggle significantly to experience the fulfillment, the peace, and the joy that we want in life, because we're on a path that may not be consistent with our values and our belief systems. So I am highly motivated. In fact, it is my mission to support women to empower themselves. Because as a coach yourself, Karina, you know that we don't necessarily empower women, we don't empower others. We help them, we support them, we coach and we mentor them to empower themselves so that they can take appropriate responsibility for getting on the path to transforming themselves and their lives and the people that they want to serve from that place of abundance, that place of richness, that place of freedom, that place of, yes, I am fulfilling my purpose as I know it to be in this life.
absolutely. I love that. You know, Bernice, one of the things that you touched on initially when you began speaking is that our values must really line up and align with uh, our purpose and our passion and what we're supposed to be doing. And that's one thing that I've really been trying to teach people over the last few years, that if your values are bumping up against what you're trying to do, your goals and the things that you really want to accomplish, then you're really and truly self-sabotaging internally and you have no idea. And one of the things that I tell people is, and I like to use this example, and I want you to expound on this because I really want you to explain this in a way that people truly understand, because I think this is imperative that people hear this, that people understand this.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, this is an example that I like to use. If your value says, well, let me rephrase it like this. If you say, I want to be um, a seven-figure earner in my business, I want to make seven figures, and that is my goal. And these are the steps that I'm going to take to be a seven-figure earner. That is wonderful. That's great. That's awesome. Nothing wrong with that. But then if your values says money is the root of all evil, then that value is bumping up against that goal. And you're not going to become a seven-figure earner, because some type of way you're going to self-sabotage, because you are internally telling yourself that money is the root of all evil. So we have to then look at our values and really understand what those values are, how they are showing up in our everyday life. Because what happens is, that value of saying money is the root of all evil, it's hindering us. But then
Mm-hmm.
if we go and we look at, where did this value come from? How did this
Mm-hmm.
value start? And it's really a misquoted, it's really the for the love of money is the root of
Absolutely.
all evil. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we change that value, we go back and we look, where did that value come from? Oh, well, guess what? It's a misquote. It's for the love of money is the root of all evil. So now that we have corrected that value, it's now able to align nicely with that goal. So I want you to talk about that and really help us come to really a conclusion of how we can really begin to dial into our values and see if they're working for us or working against us.
Wow, that is such a big question, Karina, because values are those core, deep, almost absolutes in a way that inform our life, that inform the things that we live for, and actually inform
Yes.
the things that we die for. And so it's about unraveling the truth about the things
Mm,
we hold dear. We have those strong convictions that this is true. And as you rightly point out, what is the evidence that this is true? Where is the evidence? Where is the evidence for that value? What is it based upon? And there, over the past maybe few decades, even longer than that, we are exposed to philosophical positions around relative truth, okay? Relative ethics or situational ethics. And those concepts penetrate our universities, and they teach us value systems that are not necessarily based on some ultimate truth, some standard by which we measure our values. And so it's important to strip away at where are these convictions, where are these beliefs coming from, and rigorously interrogate them before we have that settled sense of, yes, this is what I believe, and it's based on evidence, it's based on my experience, it's based on the experience of other people who share similar values. And we can actually have competing values as well. If I can stick to the one that you mentioned there earlier about money, it's, as you rightly say, it's not about money per se, it's the love of money. That is the original expression of that value, if you want to call it a value. But it's, what does this value enable me to do and to have that is consistent with the way I want to present, the way I want to give to the world? So values are purpose driven. Okay?
mm,
You have those values for a
that's
purpose.
good.
It's to allow you to unleash your God-given talent to the world to make a positive difference on others. So it's really, really important to understand, what does this value mean to me, and how can I use that value to transcend the mundane, the ordinary things of this life, and to get to that place where where I am intended to be, what I describe as the oughts in life.
Mm. So good, so good, so good, Bernice. I absolutely love that. And I love how you said our values really are these thoughts and ideas that we are willing to live by, but also die by. And I think that's key, because when you have values that are bumping up against goals and things like that, and they're not for our benefit, they're not for our good, then we could potentially die by those values incorrectly. And so I find it so fascinating that we really, like you said, interrogate. That's so good. I love that. Interrogate these values rigorously, as you said, because and the thing that I want to point out to those, and I want you to speak about this as well, Bernice, is the values that we may have had 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 days ago may not be the same as they should be today, based on the things that we're trying to do. Can our values change? I want you to talk about that. Can our values change?
Values are capable of, if you think of an iceberg, Karina, at the top, there are things that are visible, okay? For example, a career. if someone asks, well, what do you do? You know, when we meet people, one of the first questions they ask us, what do you do? So, you know, I'm a coach, I'm a psychologist, I'm an engineer, or whatever it is. Those are observable things about us. Now, that's just one example of what's visible, okay? When you look deeper below the waterline of the iceberg, there is where you have our values, our beliefs, our conviction, and our identity, okay? So to consider whether values can change, there's certain values that are typically consistent. So for example, somebody's spirituality, their trust and their faith in, you know, their savior, those values tend to be consistent. It's also possible that when exposed to certain other ideologies or other thoughts or certain environment, that they can have an influence on the way we think, the way we perceive ideas, the way we perceive the world. And it can either strengthen our original value, okay? Or it could make us go through that period of doubt. But that doubt is fine too. That doubt is fine, because that doubt can help us to almost shape and consolidate those higher order values. Because in psychology, we talk about hierarchy of values, where the very top ones are the ones that tend to be unshakable. So the environment does have a role to play. And if we think about values, if I can give you an example, Karina, women have values around being a provider for the family, okay? An identity linked to that value. Now, we may also have values around equity of opportunity, self-respect, values around serving from the fullness of ourselves. Now, when we don't really we can be in situations where one value seems to trump another. So we have financial responsibilities to, to provide for our family, etc. So we remain in roles that fulfill that value, that identity as a provider of the family. Whereas that other value around self-respect, using our expertise, the full range of our expertise. When we don't have opportunities to do that, you can see how those values kind of collide. There's a bit of a dissonance there. So it's really important for us as women to understand how our values can compete. So we serve and remain in roles where we feel marginalized and unfulfilled, while at the same time thinking that, yes, I am being a provider for my family, whereas a part of us is dying. That value around equity and opportunity, that value around the opportunity to be present, to be heard, to contribute valuable ideas and recommendations, those get squashed. And you talked earlier about self-sabotage. That is one of the ways in which women silence ourselves. We marginalize ourselves by prioritizing one value over the other. And so we lose the respect for ourselves. And in turn, we don't get the respect that we want from other people in the workplace, for example.
My goodness. Listen, Bernice, I told y'all, I knew this was going to be a heavy conversation. I knew this was going to bless you, because Bernice is, this is an amazing conversation, Bernice. You have really, truly blessed me with this. I want you to tell us, number one, briefly tell us how you are helping women in how specifically. I know in the psychology arena, coaching, however you're helping women, let us know how you're helping women. And then tell us how we can get in touch with you. Because one thing I know for sure is, for those that are listening, Bernice digs very deep. She's not surface level. And she comes to help free you from those things that have been holding you back, which happens to be you.
Mhm.
And I'm being very, very blunt. Sometimes we can be the ones that's holding us back. And it's not intentional. It's just the way we have been raised. It's society around us. It is so many external factors that causes internal stagnation. And so I want you to really consider reaching out to Bernice. And so, Bernice, I want you to tell us how you're helping women, and in what way you're helping women, and then how we can get in touch with you.
Karina, you have just encapsulated in that last statement exactly my mission. And it's about stripping things back and helping women to be able to delve deeper beneath the waterline. And part of that is to support them to look at their actual identity. And that is your actual self. Who are you now? Who are you today? How
Mm,
do you how do you answer the question, who am I? What is your understanding of your distinct, unique self? We describe ourselves as, oh, I'm a, I'm a into, in, I am a quiet person, or I'm a reserved person, or others describe themselves as life and soul of the party, or, integrate. I'm sorry, I'm struggling to find the word extroverted or introverted, and there are
okay.
different ways to describe ourselves, okay? But when I think about supporting women to look at their actual self, it's looking at their personal identity, and that is that distinguishing blend of personality characteristics and social styles by which we define ourselves and how we are recognized by others, until we can undertake an intellectually honest and truthful assessment of who we are right now. We're doing ourselves a great disservice. Sorry. And so we look at a self evaluation. We also explore our ideal self. Who do I want to become? When I become that person, what will that give me? What will that enable me to do? Going back to what we were saying earlier, we have these talents for a purpose. It's to fulfill our purpose for being on this earth. So we look at, who do I want to be? What are the characteristics that I want to exemplify? How will these characteristics lift other women, other people up? And then I look fundamentally, I support women fundamentally to look at the ought. Who ought I to be? So it's not just who I am
Mm.
now, it's not who I want to be, but who ought I to be? And that
Ooh.
that knowledge, Karina, it's what helps us to bridge that discrepancy between who we are, our ideal own self, and our own or selves. So my coaching program is around helping women to free themselves. And that freedom is not just about developing courageous confidence and being able to have those courageous conversations. All of those are important, but those are secondary to knowing who I am, who I ought to be, and the journey from who I am now to where I want to be, the identity, my most powerful identity. That is what will take care of the other secondary stuff. Okay. So that is what my coaching program is all about. And I'd be delighted to speak with any woman who wants to take a deep dive. I'd be delighted to accompany you on that journey towards real transformation. And it's about taking responsibility. We can come up with 101 excuses, Karina. We can come up with reasons as to why we are the way we are. Fine. There are biological explanations, psychological explanations for all of that. But ultimately, the question is, do you want to remain where you are, or can you envisage and pursue a more
Mm.
empowering future for yourself? That's what it's all about. And so I'd be delighted if women would get in touch with me at bernicegeorgecoach.com. We'll have a free initial conversation to see whether we align with each other. And I would say to women, Karina, it is absolutely important to get the help and support you need. Because when you think of the high jump event, we can jump so high with our own strength and power and expertise. But think of a pole vault. With that stick, we can jump even higher heights. So think of support as that pole that's going to help to catapult you to the higher heights that you want to achieve in life.
I love that analogy. I love that. And because I do watch the Summer Olympics and have since I was a little girl, I see that. I fully understand that. And I love that analogy. Now, one thing that I want people to truly understand about the conversation that Bernice and I have had today is this. There has been an identity crisis that has been taking place within society. And Bernice is one of those soldiers on the front line who's willing to go to the back, go deep with you to bring you out of that identity crisis. And I don't say that there has been an identity crisis to cast judgment or belittle or denigrate anything negative. That is not the purpose of that statement. The purpose of it is to listen. When I was in corporate America, this is the statement that was always in the forefront. You cannot manage what you don't measure. And so if you're able to sit and really evaluate, self-evaluate with love, kindness, and forgiveness of yourself, then you're able to grow, because there has to be a pruning process in our lives in order for us to grow. The same way as with a garden. You can't plant the seed, water it, and expect the sunshine to just simply go with it. And there's no pruning. You've got to clean away the weeds. You've got to make sure it's protected from animals and from other things, from insects. You've got to do all of this. And so in the very same way, we have to do that with our own selves. And so that is what this is about. So this is about really stopping the identity crisis that we have been in. And so I want to challenge you today, those of you that are listening, to contact Bernice to stop the identity crisis. And I can speak from experience. I have had an identity crisis. I have gone through the process of really evaluating myself, looking at who I am, who I want to be, and as Bernice said, who I ought to be. That is the key. You can try to be who you want to be all day long, but who you ought to be, that's what's going to pull at you every single day, who you ought to be. And Bernice is one that can help you locate who you ought to be and create a clear path to being who you ought to be. Because at the end of the day, that is what counts. That is what matters. Bernice, I am so honored, so very honored to have had this conversation with you. You have no idea how you have truly relit some fires in me. You have inspired me. You have truly blessed me with this conversation. This is something that is near and dear to my heart. And though I said at the beginning of this episode, Bernice and I have chatted a little bit, we never went into any of this. I did not know that this is what the conversation was going to be about. That is why I love fireside chats, because they're so authentic. And what you need, understand this, and I'm going to close out after this, but I'm going to give Bernice a moment to leave us with a last word of wisdom. But understand this: when you have authentic fireside chats, and that conversation is within your hearing, that means you were destined to hear that conversation, and you're now accountable for that change in your life. So if you're listening to this conversation, then you were destined to hear it. And you're now being held accountable for the change that you really need to bring about in your life, with the help of Bernice as being that pole to help you get across that pole up there. You've got to get across that bar.
Yes.
And you can't do it alone. You can only go but so high. Go watch a video if you need to of pole vaulting, because I see it clearly. I understand that clearly. So Bernice, I want to give you just a moment for any last words of wisdom for those that are listening and watching.
Women listeners, I just want you to know, I want to remind you that you are unique individual with a unique set of talents, skills, abilities, expertise, desires. And in order for you to live with purpose, with passion and meaning, there is that absolute necessity to find out who are you at the core, to find out who you can be, who you are designed to be, and take responsibility to get that information, become intimately acquainted with who you are below the externals. Let's just be real, as Karina said earlier. Life is far too precious to be living on the periphery. So to use your words, Karina, let us be the best that we can be. And it's perfectly possible to make progress and to grow. So keep moving, ladies. Keep moving, men as well. Whoever you are, movement, progress, transformation is within your grasp. You can do it. You've got to be willing to do that, and to do that with intentionality. And we'll meet each other on the other side as we watch each other clear those bars.
I love it. Bernice, I do understand that you are a part of the community, which I've recently launched. And so I do want to welcome you to the community as well. And I do want to ask, Bernice, that you share as much as you can of this within the community, because this is so needed. I believe in this so much. So please consider sharing this within the community. And for those of you that are listening, please join us. If you want to join our community, we're not on social media. It is a platform off of social media that I absolutely love, that where we're coming together as women to support one another and provide the resources and sources that we need. So folks, this has been another great episode of Go Be Great with Coach Karina. I am your host, and thank you for joining. Bye for now.